Hi everyone, my name is Eva. I'm an executive wellness consultant, and today I wanted to bring you three different spices from the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Healing Remedies. And then on the agenda today, we're going to start off with that, and then we're going to talk about a story that I learned about an hour or two ago. And it's the story of Carlo Acutis. He's a Saint Carlo Acutis. And so we'll get into who that is. And finally, we'll wrap it up with 3 to 4 stories from the Illustrated Bible, story by story. That one you may want to stick around for because it's going to be very surprising. And again, how I prepare for these videos is, once again, today I opened up the book, the Illustrated Bible story by story, and what happened was amazing surprise for myself. And again, it's a synchronicity, and it's a fun coincidence, I would say, on a couple different things that it mentions through one of the stories, and it's the first story that I flipped to. But we'll get into that later on. So let me talk to you about the 3 spices. This one I may have already mentioned, but I opened the book to this, and so I figured I'd share it again. And so again, I do that with this book and just flip to whatever page I open up to when I first open the book. And so this is the first book page that it opened to. It's called St. John's Wort, and this is what it looks like. See on the side, it's the flowers, the yellow flowers. That's St. John's Wort, and you can drink it as a tea. Okay, so, and what's a coincidence is on my last video, I was talking about verses from the book of John. And so I figured I'd share something about that. Well, it's just a coincidence that it has the same name. So St. John's Wort. This common wild plant is easy to grow, but make sure you get the right spices. Oil glands in the leaves, which show up as transparent dots against the light. The leaves and the flowers are used as a remedy for mild depression in Ayurvedic practice, Western herbalism, and homeopathy. And so this is the properties in it. It is good for, it's an antidepressant, moisturizing, strengthens the nervous system, and speeds healing. Okay, and its uses is to take regularly for mild depression, not for severe depression. You can apply as a cream for sore skin, inflamed rashes, burns, and cuts. It is an oil extract of St. John's Wort, can be used internally for stomachache, colic, or intestinal disorders. In homeopathy, is often given to treat nerve pain following injury. So that's what St. John's Wort is. And then this is the second herb, I guess you could say, or flower, or you could take it as an herb for healing that I found. It's called the water violet. This is what it looks like. And I'll read you the description. This is a delicate perennial plant with pale violet flowers and feathery leaves. Water violet is often found in ditches as it grows submerged in water. The flowers appear above the water in summer, and the properties, it says data file properties. The first bullet says gives confidence to share. And its uses as for to give the confidence to share one's strengths and weaknesses, the ups and downs of all life's rich tapestry. Water violet allows us to acknowledge the inner self as a starting point from which we expand and communicate with the world. So I thought that was really interesting. And for this plant, I guess you could say, it says to boil it for 30 minutes and then drink it as a tea. But again, for any of these suggestions, please see your doctor before taking any of these to see if there is any allergic reaction. You may want to talk to your doctor before taking any of these herbs. This one, I feel like I need a little bit of help with the pronunciation. Gentian. This is what it looks like. It looks like a flower. It's called gentian. And I'll just read what it is. Gentian flowers from late summer onward with rich blue, violet to purple flowers. By the way, I know it's not summer, it's winter right now, but if you happen to be on vacation, you go anywhere that feels like summer, you may want to look into getting these. It likes dry, well-drained conditions and sandy or chalky soils. The flowers are used to make a flower remedy for alleviating mild depression. The properties encourages positivity and restores courage. And then it says its uses. Gentian gives the courage to recognize that there is no failure when trying our best. It helps us to put disappointments into perspective and to once again display a positive attitude. So that's what gentian is, and this is again what it looks like. Again, what it recommends to do is to boil it in water for 30 minutes before drinking it like tea. Okay, so now that we're done with these herbs, plants, recommendations, we're going to move along to the story of Saint Carlo Acutis. Just give me a minute here. Okay, so this I'll have to read from my phone. So give me a second. Right here it says, that was a cough, by the way, it wasn't a sneeze. My second oldest sister coughs and it sounds like a sneeze, and I got that from her, I think. So now when I cough, it sounds like a sneeze, but it's really a cough. Okay, so the story behind Carlo Acutis, it says, is a devout Italian Catholic teenager, a tech whiz, and a gamer who used the internet to spread devotion to the Eucharist, becoming known as the patron saint of the internet before dying of leukemia at age 15. He was canonized as the first millennial saint in 2025, celebrated for his deep faith, acts of charity, and ability to blend modern life with holiness. I think that's really interesting because not many people can do that. He created a website cataloging Eucharistic miracles, offered his suffering for the church, and inspired youth to find God in everyday life. The name of the website that he created is called Miracoli Eucharistic with an I at the end, .org. And I can add this in the description box so you can do your own research and look into this. Is really interesting, fascinated. My mom told me about this a couple hours ago, so I read into it, and it was just a coincidence that I was going to create a video and she told me about this story. It was random. She knows of these stories, and I found it really interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you. But there's more on this I guess you could say, child who only lived from 1991 to 2006. And let me see. Yeah, he was a teenager. Okay, so let me keep reading here. His early life and faith, first bullet says, born in London, 1991, raised in Milan, Carlo showed deep faith for a young age, making daily mass and communion central of his life. Second bullet is tech prodigy. He taught himself computer programming and coding using these skills for evangelization. The internet saint, it was how he was recognized by many. First bullet is his website, Miracoli Eucharistic with an I at the end, .org. He created a website documenting Eucharistic miracles worldwide, turning his passion for technology into a tool for religious instruction. The second bullet says, modern holiness. He sought to make faith relevant, famously saying, the more often we receive the Eucharist, the more we will become like Jesus. And so that is the goal. I know from watching other influencers, I've learned recently that the goal is also to become like a saint, or to become a saint. And you can find that. It is a discussion that was brought up by three gentlemen, and one of them has a YouTube channel called Sips with Sarah. It is Sips, SIPS, with Sarah, SERRA. So you can look that person up. And then the other two people, one of them is called Cameron. I don't recall what his last name is. And the other person is Sean Hiller. So you can look for that YouTube video on becoming, the goal is to become a saint. And if I find the title, I will add it to the description box. I have to be careful whenever I see people from the South or watch them. I tend to catch on to their Southern accent. It's really funny, but happens here and there. His illness and death, leukemia diagnosis in 2006. He was diagnosed with an aggressive leukemia, which he accepted, offering his pain for the Pope and the Church. Second bullet is death and burial. He died in October 2006 at the age of 15. Requesting to be buried in Assisi, the hometown of Saint Francis. Let's see. So what's also interesting is it says that his body is being preserved in Assisi, Italy. And I'll read what it says here. The first millennial, Carlo Acutis. Yeah, Carlo Acutis is the first millennial saint. Rests in a glass tomb in the shrine of I don't know how to pronounce this. This is terrible. Sorry.
Renunciation.
Oh. I just didn't want to mispronounce what that was. So the Shrine of Renunciation, Church of Santa Maria Maggiore in Assisi, Italy, where pilgrims visit to see his body displayed monument as a powerful symbol of his faith and love for the Eucharist. His remains were moved there after his death from leukemia in 2006, and he was canonized in September 2025, becoming a modern saint known as God's influencer. So that's pretty interesting that they labeled him that way. And I'll show you a picture of what he looks like so you know who I'm talking about. I don't want to show you a picture of him. I just want to show you what he looks like. So this is what he looks like. So they did actually make him a saint, which is really interesting. I had no idea who this was a couple hours ago. My mom told me who he was, and I looked into it, and I felt it would be interesting to bring it up here and share this with you. So it is possible to become a saint and an influencer at the same time. Let's see if there's anything else that would be fun. Oh, yes. And this is why I also brought it up, because my mother told me about this. There was 2 miracles because of him. There were 2 miracles that happened because of him. There are families that prayed to him, and he he saved them, and they're now actual miracles because of him. So it says Saint Carlo Acutis miracles recognized by the Vatican include miraculous healing of a Brazilian boy with a malformed pancreas leading to his beatification, and a Costa Rican young woman with a severe head injury from a bicycle accident leading to his canonization. The miracle involved Mateus healed in 2013 after his family prayed to Acutis, while the second involved Valeria Valverde, whose recovery in 2022 was deemed miraculous after her mother prayed at Acutis' tomb. So that's pretty interesting that she went and prayed at his tomb, and now her daughter was saved and there was a miracle there. Let's see. So the first miracle that I told you about the Brazilian boy, he had a congenital annular pancreas. He suffered from constant pain and vomiting, which is sad. It says in 2013, after his family prayed to Acutis and placed a relic, a piece of his t-shirt on him, so I'm not sure if it was, they somehow prayed and this boy was saved. It says the outcome, he was completely healed, able to eat normally, and his pancreas function returned to normal. So that's also really very interesting, leading to Acutis' beatification in 2020, that whenever possible, we want to have good thoughts for people and pray for their healing. And I think this is what happened, that the family was praying and God heard their prayers through this Saint Carlo Acutis, and the boy was healed. And it was done through prayer. And there's been studies that when people pray even upon water, there's a chemical reaction that changes. There's particles that change, and they've proved that scientifically. And so there is proof that people are healed through prayer. So the second miracle says canonization, who was Valeria Valverde, a Costa Rican student in Florence, Italy. What it says, suffered a fatal head injury and brain hemorrhage from a bicycle accident in July 2022, with doctors giving her little chance of survival. And it says when her mother prayed at St. Actus' tomb in Assisi on July 8th, 2022, the same day Valeria began breathing on her own, and the outcome, she made a full recovery and was discharged from rehab quickly, paving the way for Acutis' canonization in September 2025. So it's pretty significant miracles happening there. And it's documented, so you can do your own research and look that up and see it for your own eyes. Okay, so we want to get into the stories, which I'm very excited to share with you. It was a surprise to me. This is how I typically prepare for these videos, because then they're fun for me, fun for you. It's a surprise for both of us for the day. Okay, so this one was so interesting because I did have a conversation with a pastor at Barnes & Noble, and he was mentioning the Sermon on the Mount. I didn't know what he was talking about. And this opened up. By the way, I should tell you more about this pastor that I met at Barnes & Noble. He was helping me find a Bible with notes on the side of the Bible so I could study and take notes as I read it. And he said, for Catholics, you want to look for a Bible that says NSRV. I believe that's what it's called. That's the actual type of Bible that I want to get as a Catholic, because it's translated from professionals who know how to translate from Scripture. It's not just any Catholic translating the language over to, Catholic terms. It is actual scholars who have taken the time to learn the literature and translate it as it's supposed to be. And I think you mentioned it's called SRV. Yeah. NRSV Bible. I did find one that I wanted to buy, but I'm waiting till next month to get it for my birthday. It's a birthday gift for myself. So hopefully they'll still have some. Okay, so the story. So if you're wanting to become a Catholic, that is a recommendation. Because I had no idea. This pastor was just like, he was sitting on a couch at a seated. He was only him sitting at like a couch, and he was sitting right so that he could see, I don't know, whoever was looking up Bibles, and he came over to help me, and he said, "Oh, can I ask you what you're looking for?" Because I was standing there for a bit of time and looking at different Bibles, and then I told him, and then we had a long conversation. And this was his recommendation. Yeah, so it's NRSV, and it's N like Nancy, R like Robert, S like Sam, V like Victor Bible. And that's the type of Bible you want to get if you're wanting to get, it says the New Revised Standard Version is a translation of the Bible in American English, first published in 1989 by the National Council of Churches. Okay, yes, so that's the kind of Bible that you want to get. But what's interesting about this pastor that I met, his name is Joseph, and Joseph would get dreams and messages from God in his sleep, which sometimes I feel like I do. It's very much a coincidence. And we were talking, and I asked him how he got into becoming a pastor, and he said that as a child, as a 7-year-old, he came down with a condition on his hip, which prevented him from being able to walk. And he said he was on crutches for 3 years. So he was still somewhat had the ability to walk, but it was a rare condition that he had where the bone was eating away at itself on the hip. And he said it was an incredibly rare disease that he had. I think he was from Kansas. I think that's where he said he's from. Yes, Kansas. And he was very friendly. He's a Christian pastor, has a wife, and he was just having a light conversation with me about, how he got into ministry, and he was helping me at the same time. But I thought I'd share that with you because, recently I went to visit someone. Well, I went to a concert involved let me go back. I'm not sure if I want to share this. Why not? I went to visit someone in another state where they were giving a talk, and they're actually not able to walk themselves. And so it's a coincidence that, and they're also kind of like a preacher type person. And so it's a coincidence that I keep bumping into people who have ailments or disease in their bodies. The way to prevent those, I guess you could say, growing up, we were very careful about what we did. We always thought 5 times before doing something. It was really for us to prevent ourselves from getting ourselves hurt. So whenever anything we ever did, we're super precautious. I'm one of 5, and we're all like this. We always try to prevent from accidents happening. We wear seatbelts. We anything and everything that we do, we always ask ourselves, is this a good idea? You would be surprised. Some people just go about their day, and I don't know if it's either self-sabotage or they just, I don't know, they think that they nothing will happen to them, or I don't know. I was with a former partner that we went skiing, we went snowboarding, and first time around he was just sliding down as if he was a pro, and I was just really worried that we would end up at the emergency room, because he just felt like he was the evil Knievel, and he would just do random silly things and then end up in the emergency room. I know one time he was working, and they slid the pizza over an oven with poison. There was already like poison or cleaning solution, and it wasn't really his fault, but I guess there was one time something that he did with his, oh yes. There was another time he played soccer, and he sprained his ankle, and that same day or the following day, he needed to travel to Brazil, and he went with a swollen foot. And he got to Brazil, and his foot was enormous, and it was due to the fact that his foot was pointing downward, and he was playing soccer, and he sprained it really badly, and it was like the size of a balloon. When I think he had to travel through Florida to get to Brazil, and just different things like that none of that really happened to us. We were really super careful at all times. We really prevented ourselves from doing things if we knew that something bad was happening. But my recommendation is to just please think twice about doing something, and to take care of yourself and not self-sabotage. And so now we'll get into this story, I guess. I told you the story about the pastor, and then we'll get into these stories. So the first story that I opened the book to is called The Sermon on the Mount. And this story, the pastor brought up during conversation. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I found when I opened up this book, this image popped up, and it says it's the Church of Beauty. I don't know how to pronounce this very well, so I'm gonna have to look it up. Sorry about that.
Beatitudes.
Beatitudes. This is the Church of Beatitudes. I'll show you the image. As best I can, because it's really difficult to hold this heavy book. So that's what it looks like. It's the Mount of Beatitudes near Capernaum, is where Jesus is said to have preached the Sermon on the Mount. The Franciscan church overlooking the Sea of Galilee was completed in 1938, and its octagonal floor plan represents the 8 Beatitudes. I thought it was beautiful when I opened up the to this page. But so we'll get into the coincidences that I found on here. It's a little jaw-dropping, but by now I don't know if I'm getting used to it. These coincidences that keep occurring. Okay, so the Sermon on the Mount. So after Jesus had traveled throughout Galilee, teaching and healing large crowds from across numerous regions, gathered and followed him. So Jesus began to teach them a deeper understanding of the scriptures. So this is when Jesus is older now, and he's getting into his calling. Okay, it says, when Jesus saw the crowds from Syria, Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and the region across the Jordan, that's found in Matthew 4:25, he went up a mountainside. He sat down, and his disciples came to him. Sorry, I need a drink of water. Mouth's getting dry. I'll just read the last part again so you know where I am, or where we are. He went up a mountainside. He sat down, and his disciples came to him. Jesus began by teaching them 8. I keep forgetting the pronunciation of this. Beatitudes. Is that what it is? Beatitudes. And I'm sorry if it's distracting. I just want to make sure I have it right. So Jesus began his teaching. He began by teaching them 8 Beatitudes. These are statements that define, congratulate, and encourage God's faithful despite the challenges they face. Some echo the Old Testament promise of a healing Redeemer who would bring good news to the poor and to comfort all who mourn. That's Isaiah 61, 1 and 2. Others state that those with little faith, the meek, all have reason to be happy despite their present circumstances, because they will be welcomed by God. I'll say that again. All have reason to be happy. So the ones that are meek, those who are going through struggles, I would say, they will be welcomed by God. Quote, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And that's found in Matthew 5. I'll read you what's on the list here. The Beatitudes. Jesus affirms the happiness of those who belong to his kingdom, for their present suffering will not last. Happy are, 1, the poor in spirit, who nevertheless turn to God. 2, those who mourn, who will be comforted. 3, the meek, the lowly, who do not thrust themselves forward at the expense of others. 4, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness in themselves and in society. I'll read those again, just to make sure that it made sense. 3, the meek, the lowly, who do not thrust themselves forward at the expense of others. Again, this is Jesus affirms the happiness of those who belong to his kingdom, for their present suffering will not last. Happy are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness in themselves and in society. 5, the merciful, who will be shown mercy. 6, the pure in heart, whose whole hearts are open to God. 7, the peacemakers, who replace conflict with reconciliation. So those are the Beatitudes that I found here in this section. I can't make this up. I just opened the book and this is what came up for us tonight as a message from God. Okay. Let's see. It says, Jesus and the Jewish law do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. That's 5:17. Jesus had come to fulfill the Hebrew scriptures. His concern was to demonstrate the following: the literal requirements of the law was not sufficient. It was equally important to be faithful to God in one's heart and mind. The commandment said, "You shall not murder." That's 5:21, Exodus 20 and 13. Jesus taught, but anger and contempt would also be judged. So reconciliation was important. I'll read it again. But anger and contempt would be judged. So reconciliation was important. You shall not commit adultery, 5:27, Exodus 20:14. Jesus quoted, "But for a man to look lustfully at a woman was adultery in his heart." That's 5:28. A greater reward from God would be achieved for loving your enemies than loving those who you love already. And what's a coincidence there is that I actually just uploaded a video yesterday with the song called Todo es de color, and it's by Alejandro Sanz. He's a famous singer from Spain. He's a Spaniard. And he's been around for ages. I would say more than 20 years. And actually a lot more than that, maybe. Like 25 years or maybe even more. And the song has to do with becoming brothers or sisters with those who you are in conflict with. And so that's what and I'll tell you this too. I just need a minute because it's profound. I had a dream a couple weeks ago about a man sitting on a courtyard. I can't even describe. I guess I could say it's a courtyard that feels like you're on vacation. Like think you're on one of the islands of, like, in Aruba, let's just say. And it was a enclosed courtyard, and it was all wooden. A mahogany red is what I think I remember seeing. And I was looking for something in the courtyard, or maybe in the courtyard and around it, maybe, or around in that area. And I was looking for signs in there. And then I did notice a man sitting on a chair with a guitar singing. And the song that came up was Todo es de color, which is a song that's sang by Alejandro Sanz. And really the song is a bit of a prayer to God, to ask him for help, to send us love, and for our, the ones that they call our enemies to be our brothers and sisters. But yeah, I like to have this motto similar to this other influencer that I found, where he says he doesn't have any enemies. And he does, and we don't. We want to make sure that we have that mentality, that we want to make sure that we forgive people, and know that everyone has a heart and a mind, and that you want to forgive as though whatever you think they may have done to you, you want to forgive as though you forgot what they had done, because then you are healing yourself and not causing inflammation within your body, because you're always thinking about that negative thing that happened, or that person did, and you want to make sure that you let that go, because those are the people that get invited into heaven, is once you let go and forgive people, so that you can forgive them for yourselves, so that God can see that you have a good heart and you have a pure heart, and you want to move forward with being like a brother or sister to everyone. And the way, I guess, to heaven, closer to heaven, if you want to become a Catholic, you do want to get baptized, but there are other ways of getting into heaven, and that is what the Bible says, that you do want to get baptized. In the Catholic religion, it is a tradition that you are baptized as a baby. Normally that's when it happens, but you can do it at any time if you do plan to convert. I know that there's a gentleman named John, again, that name John, Bergsma, has created a YouTube channel called Saint Paul Center, and he was a former Calvinist. And what I really like about his presentation and presence is that it is like attending a lecture hall, or attending a session at college, where he talks to you like you're an intelligent person, and you can comprehend what he's explaining to you and sharing with you. And I would feel that if you were ever to meet him in person, he would treat you like an intellectual person with good intentions. And so I feel that you would get respect from him. And what I respect about him too is that he went out and did his own research, and started to do more research on the Catholic religion. And what he found out for himself is that the more research he did is the reason why he converted to becoming a Catholic. And so there are others who have done the same thing, like Lee Strobel, and John Burke. Lee Strobel is a well-known author and a pastor now, and so is John Burke. Is he had got a degree in engineering and then became a pastor from doing research from near-death experiences. And so those are both two, I would say you could call them scholars, since they've done more than 30 years of research on their own into the Bible, who also did their own research. And especially Lee Strobel, his plan was, because he went to Yale University, to become a lawyer, and he ended up proving himself wrong and then converting to becoming a Christian. And so these are two gentlemen who have become Christian and converted from atheism, I think. And I forget what John Burke was. I believe he was an atheist as well, but I don't recall his story exactly. But again, you can actually watch really interesting YouTube videos on both of them. They both have done several interviews that you can do your own research. But I wanted to bring that out because it was a coincidence that I had brought up, that I had created a video, a reel on Instagram, and added that song, which I had also dreamed about a couple weeks ago. And the day actually when I had the dream, I felt inspired and I learned the song for the day. And so I was singing it through the day, learning it on my own. And it's a beautiful poetic song, and it's a prayer to God for everyone to be my brother and sister, and for people to learn to love each other. And so that was the message from God for when I was in that dream. And I didn't finish the dream as I was explaining it. I felt like I was in Aruba somewhere in a courtyard, and a gentleman to my right was singing that song, and it really caught me off guard because to me, he was just some random person singing, but the song grabbed my attention. And then when I tried looking over, the brightness of the sun behind me to, I would say, at 4 o'clock degrees, because I was facing left of the courtyard, and the gentleman was sitting to my right, and that was the front stage. But there was such brightness coming behind me in front of this man that I can't tell you what he looks like. At best, maybe I grab a quick glimpse of him. And I don't know, to me, maybe it could have been God singing, possibly, I don't know. It was just a dream. And it was this man, I'm not sure, and I think this is what he was wearing, because I caught a quick glance of him holding a guitar, and he was wearing beige, beige dress pants and a beige button-down shirt. And so again, the brightness and the warmth of the space, I couldn't capture what he looked like, because when I looked to my right to see him, the brightness of the sun is so bright that it just completely erases what he looks like, and it's just glaring bright yellow light from him. And then once I try to take a glance at him, I wake up. So I barely got a glimpse of who this person was that was singing, but what I can remember from the dream is the song that I've heard many times, because it's one of my favorite songs from Alejandro Sanz's Unplugged album. And so it was a coincidence that I read this in the story. A greater reward from God would be achieved for loving your enemies than loving those you love already. So I felt like this was really speaking to me today. And I was really happy that I found it, because I was able to share these intimate stories with you. So I'll keep reading here. It says, Sermon for Life. Jesus also taught about humility. That's something else that I mentioned in a couple last videos to you, that Jesus does want you to have that humility always. It's really important to get through, I guess you could say, the gates of heaven, is that you want to humble yourself and you want to practice that here on earth, because I feel once you cross over, it might be a rude awakening that he might say, hey, you didn't learn your lesson. I'm sending you to this body and this circumstance, and you have to live a whole life again in this type of circumstance until you learn your lesson to be humble or have humility. So you want to practice it so that you can, when you get to the gates of heaven, you and God can have a good conversation about the different ways that you've changed, and you've been able to become more humble or have that humility in your heart, in your mind, and in your body, without having resentment of any sort. Okay, it says, Sermon for Life. Jesus also taught about humility, non-retaliation, turn the other cheek. That's 539. Giving to the needy, 623. Praying simply. Oh, yes. So that was another coincidence that I mentioned in my last title of my video. I titled it Simply Praying the Rosary. And here it is again. I read it here in this verse, or this story. It says, giving to the needy, 623, praying simply. So that was a coincidence. When I read this, my jaw kind of dropped. And privately, and so praying simply and privately. So it is a good idea to pray privately too. I think I do encourage that. A lot of people do that, which is good. And it's a form of kind of like self-respect, I would say, to do that as well on your own. Being forgiving and non-judgmental, that's 6:14:7:1, and trusting God to provide and not driven by anxiety or seeking earthly wealth, 6:19:25. Ask, quote, ask and it will be given to you, end quote. That's 7:7. That's found in 7:7. This is under Matthew. This is Matthew 5-7. That's another coincidence I just thought of right now. The pastor that I was talking to at the Barnes & Noble that I was telling you about, I asked him, what are verses that gives you conviction? And then also, this is another coincidence that I'm remembering. I was working with a Harvard student. I think he was a postgraduate, and he would do this ritual in the morning as a form of meditation. I asked him what his routine was in the morning. He said that he would read verses from Matthew 5-7, and apparently those are ways of reminding yourself how to have conviction, is what the pastor told me from when I met him, because I wanted verses to read to create conviction in me. In all things, treat people as you would like to be treated, 7:12. That's Matthew 7:12. Jesus warned of false prophets, wolves in sheep's clothing. That's Matthew 7:15. Who would spread false teachings, putting Jesus' words into practice, is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. His life would have firm foundations. When storms came, the house would stand, unlike a house built on sand. The crowd was amazed that Jesus taught as one who had authority, unlike their teachers of the law. That's 7:29. So that was it for that first story. I wanted to share it because it was a fun surprise for me tonight, and I wanted to share that with you tonight. I'm gonna read this. I wanted to read several other stories, but this video is getting to be too long, and I don't want to make it too long, so maybe I'll save it for tomorrow into the other stories that I found here for you. Yeah, I think what is best is if I save these stories for you, because then we'll have an agenda and we'll know what we're going to be talking about for the next time. So I'm going to read this last story, and this is about the Sabbath. This is one of the commandments is to keep Sundays for prayer and for going to church. And so the title of the story is Challenges to the Sabbath. The purpose of the Sabbath day, today is Sunday. And I think I'm going to when I'm done with the story, I may pray the Rosary, because today is Sunday and I wanted to kind of keep that consistent praying as often as I can for you and for all of us worldwide. Yeah, so I think that's what I'll do, is read this last story, and then I'm going to cut this video and start a new one to pray the Rosary for today's Sunday. So again, the name of the story is Challenges to the Sabbath. The purpose of the Sabbath day for people to be restored after 6 days of work, Exodus 28:11, and to be reminded of God's good creation. In the story, its true meaning became a flashpoint between Jesus and the Pharisees. On a Sabbath day, this is the start of the story. On a Sabbath day, Jesus and his disciples were walking through cornfields, and the disciples plucked some ears of corn. The Pharisees saw this and confronted Jesus, saying, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Mark 2:24. Such strict enforcements of the Sabbath was part of what Jesus called human traditions. Found in 7:8. This is in the book of Mark. Let me show you a quick picture of what this is so that you have an idea of what is happening here. We'll get into what this is. Yeah. We'll get into what this is so that you can kind of stick around with what the story is about. That's Jesus right there, right here. And this is a man that has something wrong with his hand. And we'll get into that, about what that is. I'll read you the blurb from that painting of what this is. Jesus cures an injured man. This Byzantine mosaic shows, it's a mosaic, shows Jesus healing man's paralyzed hand on the Sabbath. His action provoked anger from the Pharisees, who believed the law did not allow healing on the Sabbath unless saving life. I'm just looking at another small picture here about healing the sick. Okay. It says the implication, just hold it here so that it's at a better angle for you. It says the implication was that such traditions created to ensure obedience to the law and adherence to the Sabbath could obscure its real intentions. Jesus answers his critics. Jesus replied from Scripture, asking the critics if they had forgotten the story of David that's found in 1 Samuel 21, 1 through 6. Fleeing from Saul, and desperate for food, David had taken some of the sacred bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat. He had eaten the bread himself and given some to his companions on the Sabbath. The story Jesus referred to gives no sign of God's disapproval of David's act. Jesus summoned his response to the Pharisees by stating that the Sabbath was made for humans and not vice versa. People were not created to prop up the Sabbath. The purpose of the Sabbath was to lift burdens from them. It was a day for people to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually restored. A day of rest and recreation. A day for rest and recreation. The second part of Jesus' response was a claim. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath, 2:28. Again, this is in the book of Mark. In the next story, Jesus demonstrated this authority and emphasized the true purpose of the Sabbath power. On another Sabbath day, Jesus went in a synagogue. In the crowd was a man with a shriveled hand. Jesus told the man to stand up in front of everyone in the synagogue. Then he turned to the crowd and asked whether it was lawful to do good or to do evil, or to save someone's life or to take a life on the day of the Sabbath. The crowd remained silent. Jesus looked at the people and deeply distressed at the Sabbath hearts, at their stubborn hearts. Jesus looked at the people and, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out and his hand was completely restored. That's found in Mark 3:5. The use of the words completely restored is significant here. The man's hand was put back to the way it was meant to be. Therefore, in these two Sabbath stories, Jesus reestablished the true meaning of the Sabbath restoration. So Jesus restored this gentleman's hand even on the Sabbath day. To me, the meaning of this story was that God loved, or Jesus loved, all people, and he did whatever he could to help with their healing whenever possible, even on the Sabbath day. And I feel that's really a generous way of living. And I hope that maybe people can learn from that and become more generous with themselves and with others, and be more gentle also. I think I'm going to stop there. I did have 3 more stories that I wanted to share with you that were really interesting and exciting. But I'll save that for tomorrow. And I think I'm going to cut this video now and then pray a rosary for today's Sunday. And I definitely want to share these stories that I found because they're really interesting. And I hope it's providing you with interest in these stories, because I feel like there's so much to be learned from these, and you can build so much connection with people, not just have shallow conversations, and really linger in people's minds by having these meaningful, well-intentioned conversations and stories that you can talk about for many years. So I hope that was fun for you to hear. And I look forward to sharing more of these stories tomorrow. And I want to thank you for your time and your presence. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.